half of that is still Big Ten and SEC, but remember that the other half is not. So there's a lot of matchups that you would be screwing yourself out of a lot of good football just because you limited it to the Big Ten and the SEC. What is up, everybody? It is Jake with Master Football, back at it again. Happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be up to date on all things EA college football, subscribe to this channel right now. I also do some pro football, college football, and Madden videos as well. Please subscribe. It's free to you. Helps out the channel a lot. Okay, like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I'd really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, guys, here we are. We are in the dog days of summer right now. College football starting to heat up a little bit. There's a little bit of conference realignment talk, this and that. I know that the Pac-12 and the Big 12 right now are not exactly the best of friends. That being said, I wanted to talk about something that seems to be an underlying story that goes across the college football world. That story is, and the narrative is, that FBS, and as a matter of fact, even the top 50 or 60 teams are considering breaking away from the NCAA and forming their own league. Now, I don't mind the FBS breaking part just because there can be some sort of situation about rules and this and that. But the narrative is that the top 50 or 60, there's a lot of crap in the FBS that we want to cut out, get the top 50 or 60, and then go from there. I have an article that talks about that, not specifically, but it talks about kind of the idea. So this is from on3.com. So Adam Rittenberg gives an update on Power 5 FBS programs possibly leaving the NCAA. Adam Rittenberg, I think we're closer and closer to Power 5 leagues, if not all of the FBS breaking away and self-governing in a different way. And again, his reasoning behind that was because of NIL, the amount of money they make, this and that, you know, the nature of football compared to other sports, you know, injuries, medical things like that. There's lots of those situations. But it also says here, Rittenberg's update doesn't indicate whether or not the FBS has officially begun talks to leave the NCAA, but it lines up directly with many reports that indicate schools have discussed the idea. Ohio State's AD, Gene Smith, talked about that tool. He kind of mentioned the fact that it would be all of the FBS, but there's plenty of people out there who think it might just be the top couple leagues, 40, 50 schools, and tell everybody else in the FBS to sayonara. So as a big fan of Boise State football, I would absolutely hate this situation because I feel like Boise State is on that cusp, somewhere between the 60th to the 80th best program in the country. And I know that, you know, some people, oh, it's closer to 80, oh, it's closer to 100, whatever, okay, shut up. But my point is that there's those teams that are kind of on the cusp there. Where does Oregon State finish? Where's Washington State? Where's Boston College? Where's Wake Forest? Wake Forest had a really good team on the field this last season. As a matter of fact, even Kenneth Walker transferred from them, and then he was one of the top running backs picked in the NFL draft. That's how much talent they have on that team. So even with that, the fact that there is still competition, that there was not as big of programs as USC, Texas, Oklahoma, there still seems to be the narrative that they would break away and kind of form that. I want to go over a clip I saw recently. We're going to react to a clip from Sikkim 365 Sports. They had an interview with Bob Thompson, former CEO of Fox Sports, talking kind of about that in his own way. Let's hear what he has to say.
There's a theory out there that there's going to be a Fox League, the Big Ten, an ESPN League, the SEC. Do you believe that the networks feel that college football, especially with a new playoff deal coming, is in a better position if, when the playoff expands, all these conferences are involved?
More than two leagues is absolutely necessary. You can't have two conferences and really say, you know, unless they're 28 teams each or something like that, and say that you have a really representative sample of all the collegiate football across the country. I think it's important for the Big Ten and for the SEC that the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12, and the Mountain West, and the AAC remain relevant for college football as a whole.
He kind of mentioned, now it might get to the point that there might be, you know, two 2018 leagues or something like that, but right now he feels like going forward, there should be a strong Pac-12, Big 12, ACC, Mountain West, American, you know, MAC, Sun Belt, Conference USA. I think Conference USA has got some limitations there, but in essence, what he's saying is that there needs to be a stronger middle and bottom for the FBS to kind of continue on. He thinks the networks believe that too, and I actually wanted to bring this up because I think that I was looking through all this stuff, and I personally think that the whole FBS, the top 50, 60 are going to break away. The money, it doesn't really, the stats just don't add up. There's 3 big reasons why I feel like those stats don't add up. Let's get into those reasons right now. The number 3 reason why I feel like it doesn't make sense for the top 50 or 60 to break away from the FBS is because it would alienate certain TV markets. So here we are on swimswam.com analyzing the new NCAA Power 5 television markets. And you'll come down here and you'll see a very, very common thing. So you see that the Big Ten has done their best to prioritize these big markets: New York, LA, Chicago, Philly. Dallas-Fort Worth is split between Big 12 SEC. Then you start to get into these situations. Pac-12, number 6 at San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose. There has been rumors that Stanford and Notre Dame would join, maybe Stanford and Cal. I think those Stanford and to join the Big Ten is probably partially due to them joining with, trying to entice Notre Dame to come with them. That's what I think that's going through. But if you continue on here, again, SEC, ACC, SEC, Big 12, Big 10, then you get into Boston. So Boston would be completely cut off from that. Then you get into Phoenix, Arizona, Seattle, Tacoma. Seattle, Tacoma might, if they expand it beyond that. And then what else do you got here? We've got, Denver. They would probably be left out. You've got ACC for Miami, Fort Lauderdale. That might be SEC 2. I don't know how many Florida and Florida State, or just Florida alums are in Miami, but I suspect it would probably still count as SEC. Then you talk about Sacramento, Stockton, Modesto, Portland, Charlotte. You see, they're alienating a lot of these top tier cities. So if you were to do that, I think that, again, the Big Ten has shown us, the Big Ten and the American, as a matter of fact, have shown us that markets do matter in their conference realignment. I think that this current model, they would have to completely drastically recalculate how they value their conferences and how they value their teams, because the current models just don't agree with the fact that going with those big markets and keeping the big markets, because there's a lot of them that wouldn't be included in here. If you come down here and check out 27 San Diego, none of the Power 5 are there. So I think that would severely hurt their watchability. There would be no reason for Salt Lake, Denver, Phoenix to watch the top flight and college football, because they're not really involved. My number 2 reason why the top 50 or 60 teams won't break away from the FBS is because it would severely hurt the playoff matchups we could see. So I went ahead and created this based on the Week 15 after the conference championship standings. So remember here, there's been this big talk that we're talking about expanding to an 8-team, 12-team, 16-team playoff. I will let you know, this is operating under one understanding here. And the understanding is the fact that once you go to 16-team playoff, even if those top 50 or 60 teams break away, I don't think that they would go down in playoff numbers. So here's what I've done so far. I just took the Big Ten and SEC with OU, Texas, USC, and UCLA. And I went ahead and I took there at the end of this last season, that's 32 teams, I took the top 16 teams. And then over here, I have the top 16 teams in all the FBS after that season. So at the end of the season after conference championships, you look at these matchups here. The first round would be Bama versus Mississippi State. I know it's a rivalry game, but it would probably be a blowout. Mississippi State was 7-6. You see UCLA and Michigan, and they would play. And I just basically went with the top rated teams, except for when Georgia played Michigan. I had Michigan going to the national championship. But you see these matchups over here. You've got Purdue, you've got Minnesota, who was a 9-win team, but they weren't ranked. These are some okay matchups. You come over here and you see this, these are just way better matchups. So look at this right here. So whereas Iowa and Michigan would be a 2-7 matchup, remember they're the number 7 team of the Big Ten and SEC. With these 4, they're the number 17, but over here, they're the number 15 team. So instead of seeing the Big Ten championship rematch in the second round, you're seeing it in the first round. You also have the Pac-12 champ going up against the Big Ten runner-up, so that's a great game there. There's so many other good games you can get in here. You've got this Cincinnati Notre Dame rematch that will be an awesome one to have throughout the regular season. So there's so many other great matchups you can have here versus this section. Like I said, this is operating on the understanding that once you get to 16-team playoff, you need those 16 teams to be there. Now remember here, okay, so you got 1, 2, 3, and then we've got 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So still, half of that is still Big Ten and SEC, but remember that the other half is not. So there's a lot of matchups that you would be screwing yourself out of a lot of good football just because you limited it to the Big Ten and the SEC. And then my number 1 reason why I do not think the top 50 or 60 are going to break away from the FBS is because you'd have to somehow get Fox and ESPN to to be on the same page. So this article here was from 2019. These little battles have been going on forever. Fox is making progress competing with ESPN by presenting itself as an alternative to perceived SEC favoritism. Remember, ESPN went all in on the SEC. It was a great gamble, but it looks like Fox is putting their gamble on the Big Ten. And they, again, as far back as 2019, they were talking about this. There's also other situations here where you can tell that because ESPN is backing away from Fox, it turns out they're actually going to help out other leagues. Why ESPN, not Fox, is the network that can save the Pac-12, also rumored to save the Big 12, because like I said before, the ESPN has backed away from the Big 10, and then, again, we're talking about the first time in 40 years that they're going to do that. So with that, that means ESPN is going to have the options to, they're going to have more options to go out there and spend money rather than spending the Big 10. The Big 10 is nice, but they can probably split that money between, a little bit tier 2 rights for the Big 12, a little bit of tier 2 rights for the Pac-12, maybe some Mountain West, maybe some, American, something like that. They're going to have a lot more options because ESPN is backing away from the Big 10. And again, this comes back to this too. This was just for college basketball. ESPN is backing away from Big 10. So for the first, what was it, the quote down here? Is that if talks aren't reopened, it'll mark the first time in 40 years that ESPN won't carry coverage of Big 10 football or basketball per Marchand. Again, like I said, these networks, there's just too many competing interests here. Getting them all on the same page, having them break away, keeping a 12-team play or going to a 16-team playoff, and then not doing it. And there's so many different things they can do there that they have to work through. That I think that there's a lot competing against that. Like I said, I want to make sure that we're clear. I think that there could be an FBS breakaway and there could be some sort of like redesigning of rules away from the NCAA. I don't think that's unheard of. But in terms of not only were we going to do that, but we're also going to break away the top 50 or 60 teams. It just doesn't make sense. There's too many bidders on the conferences. There's too much need for content. There's too many windows that you have to fill. I just don't see it happening. And like I said, those 3 reasons, I think those also are the big ones why. All right, guys, get in the comments. Let me know what you guys think of my analysis. And again, I encourage everything. If you see something right there, a typo, something like that, let me know. But remember, like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I appreciate it. I will see you guys later. I am out.